Hey everyone, welcome to my podcast. I am your host, Logan Goldberg, and this is Auras of the Big Sky. Today I'm sitting down with Dianne from Sister Earth Creations, a local Missoulian who focuses on spiritual wellness and healing. Let's dive into it.
And probably to start it off, if you want to just tell me a little bit about yourself
Okay.
and your practice, and we'll start there.
My name is Dianne Keast. I was born in Montana. I've lived in Montana and Idaho my whole life. I have a certificate of training in spiritual life coaching and also in meditation, and I primarily focus both of those training skills on helping people with personal spirituality and personal growth. So at one point, I did have a booth in a shop where I could do things like meditation classes, but then the event of COVID happened.
Yeah.
And so now I'm just doing basically a private practice where I help people find the meditation that works for them. A lot of people they'll try to meditate. They will have a misconception that stands in their way of realizing what meditation could be for them, or they'll have a difficulty picking which one is really going to help them. So I'll help them do that. And then, of course, I have the Oracle deck. That is a deck that I invented, a system that I invented. I'm the only one who has this deck.
Wow.
And I created that to try to help people. I wanted to connect people to their higher selves. So I feel like a person's soul is like the unconditional loving parent of all their human experiences. And when that connection is not strong or that awareness is not there, people have a much harder time. They get lost in the story of their life. And then it's harder for them to work out how they could be happier, who they really are, how they might want to change, what healing they could do, that they might already have the answer to it. And they just are unaware that if they were connected to their higher self, they might already know what to do to make their lives better. And so everything I do is kind of geared to helping people kind of unconditionally accept themselves as an imperfect being. And striving towards some form of perfection that works for them. And it never ends. Like you think you're through with your issues and you've been working on it for so long and you're out of plateau and you're done. No, that's just a new phase. And
Totally.
so people that really want to grow spiritually will gain that mindset of, oh, here's a new thing and I'd like to learn about it. And here's a thing that's troubling me. I'd like to learn how to get through that or how to improve my relationship with that event that happened. It's my belief that what we really are to our life story is the perspective. So we bring context to our life story. And so for the last more than 30 years, I've been writing my oracle cards to help people see sort of a validation of what's going on in their life when they come to have a reading. And then we might ask a question, tell us more what that's about, and draw a card. And then tell us what might help with that, and draw a card. I read completely blind, which means I don't have my clients tell me any stories or questions or anything. Because I want what I'm telling them to be completely clean of wanting. I deeply want them to be happy. I deeply want them to feel better than they do or to be validated on their spiritual path. And so I'd like to know nothing because it helps me to not tell them what they want to hear, but to tell them what I find. And I trust the cards 100%. If the cards say something, even if the client tells me that it's not really right, it doesn't really work for them, I'm like, well, I don't know what the problem is. Clearly something is in the way, but the cards never lie. So there's some part of this concept that you need to look deeper at for yourself. And so I do a lot of my readings begin with that, cards.
Okay.
And then that's sort of the basic readings that I do. And then I'm also a non-traditional, you could say, witch. That was my childhood aspiration, was to be a bog witch. So my ancestors come from an area of the world where the Celtic culture was really prominent. So Cornwall, Wales, Ireland, Scotland. And there's very strong tribal traditions, very based in the hunter-gatherer kind of culture.
Yeah.
So I practice some of that, but mostly being in Montana, it's often hard to find a tradition where someone will say, you can be my learner.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it is just I allow whatever we might believe that divine power of benevolent creation is, that governs what I do. I allow it to govern my gifts as well. So while some psychics might be spirit mediums and they can just reach out and be like, I want to talk to a certain ghost and I want to have a conversation. That's not how I do it. Whatever's supposed to happen in an appointment with a client, that is what will happen. Oftentimes that's different than what they think they're coming to see me for. So I can't say that I've never had encounters with the spirit of someone who's passed on that a person needs to, but I don't go into the appointment thinking that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So all kinds of, it's an adventure. I never know what's going to happen in an appointment. But it's almost always healing for the client. And you know, these people are coming to me because they're ready for that healing. So, usually they just didn't know, they were just missing one little piece of the puzzle that they needed to progress with their growth. And so that's primarily what I do in my current practice. I just finished my exams for hypnotherapy.
I did see that on your website. Yes.
So will be finishing up my practicum, getting in all the hours of practice that I need, and then I will be certified in hypnotherapy whilst I continue being educated about hypnotherapy to gain my clinical hypnotherapy certificate. And then after that, I'm going to be registering at, there's a school in Berkeley called the Institute of the Sacred Stream.
Okay.
They teach a unique kind of healing called depth hypnosis. It's kind of a tongue twister, depth hypnosis. It combines Buddhist philosophy with shamanism and hypnotherapy to have a certain particular protocol that you would use for deep spiritual healing. So I'll be completing that, and I'll probably be doing that for the next 1.5 to 2 years where I'm doing their program. So putting in a lot of hours of training in the next year of my life. So I won't have a brick and mortar while I'm doing that because I will be too, but I still do practice over Zoom. Like I can meet with clients over Zoom or over the phone. Some of my clients live so rural that Zoom is not reliable. And so we'll have appointments on the phone. Occasionally I get called but sometimes I don't go in and really do exorcisms, but I do teach people how to cleanse their space, how to achieve a feeling of sacred space within their own home. Yeah. Next question.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you mentioned like finding traditions in Montana, because that's kind of how this project came about. Is we were supposed to pick a hobby, something we love, and create content on it. And I was like, well, I have a hard time finding spiritual practices in Montana. Like it is few and far between.
That's how I started as well.
Yeah.
Was like, well, I tried tarot reading and I was like, it's just not flowing for me. Like, just wasn't working for me because first I needed to not memorize the tarot deck. I needed to understand the process of reading.
Totally.
Because you can read anything. It doesn't have to be tarot. It could be the change in your pocket if you understand the process of reading. And so that was what I first had to find the knowledge to teach myself.
Yeah.
And then through that was how I started developing. As I would start to do a reading, I would see a symbol in my mind. And I'd be like, well, that's interesting. I wonder what that one means. So then it was 15 years of going through each symbol as it came to me and really exploring through meditation, what is the meaning of this symbol? And what message could it bring to someone if I were going to help them? What would it help them to understand about themselves? And then now we have a 33 card deck. Wow. Both positive being in right balance and negative being out of balance meanings for each card, except for the divine cards, which are not reversible and are always a blessing no matter what. And so the cards have a meaning. The way I lay them on the table has a meaning. And then really important, super clear on the question you're going to ask before you draw that card out. And those are the steps that really work for any kind of reading. It's extremely hard to read for yourself if you're really invested in something. It's really tempting to be like, I don't like that card. I'm going to draw another one. And so I don't read for myself. I read for others. And then when I want a reading, I go to someone else because I know that I'll be like, oh, if it's something I don't want, I don't want to turn it over now. And so that's one of the things that can be really common with people that are doing spiritual practices is that they have a hard time doing it for themselves or someone else they're really, really invested in. And so I always have one of my friends read.
Has living in Montana shaped or deepened your spiritual practices in any way?
Well, I've lived most of my life here.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I have a lot to compare it with.
Fair.
I would say that being near Native culture has shaped my practices. Being that I was raised in Native culture, I wouldn't say I was raised as a member of Native culture. I was raised Native adjacent. So living on the reservation, being the only white person in my class for many years, picking out some of their, so they might have a lot of Christianity, they might have a lot of Catholicism on the reservations, but 100% of them usually believe in some part of old Native culture. So picking out the mindset of that, that the world is more than just what we're told, that there's subtle fields and secret energies and mysterious beings around us. And I think as a child, that was really the world I wanted to live in, was the one that had subtle energies and mysterious beings. And so I grew up just being like, yes, I will accept all the mysterious beings as long as they're nice to me. And so from a very young age, I was raised to, as if it was nothing extraordinary to believe in spirits being around. And not just those who have passed on, but other kinds of spirits, energy beings, nature spirits, particular legendary manifestations of certain things that will come to you for certain reasons. And so when I was little, I kind of just decided that was what I wanted to live in. And from that came this desire to be a bog witch. And just to not have to put up with all the people that were part of a culture that I didn't really enjoy very much. And then as I got older, I realized that, I can't be a bog witch. Not in Montana anyway. And since I couldn't move to Cornwall, I spent most of my younger life in caregiving fields, taking care of people who really needed it, elder care, adults with brain injuries, children and adults with disabilities. And so in that way, I have grown into coming to the next phase of my life, which is where I'm doing now, the spiritual work. That is what I've always wanted to do, but it's taken me a really long time to get to this place. Or what feels like a long time anyway to me.
No, I find it interesting. We were just talking about that last night, about the cross-section of spirituality and Native culture in Montana.
Right. And it's a thing where being a white person, being a very, very white person, I've always felt like I want to honor it, I want to respect it, but I would not adopt it or practice it unless I was specifically invited by individual humans who wanted me to come and participate. And that has not happened, but I don't go looking for it either. So, and I don't have any genetic Native ancestors that we know. We thought we did. I think just being around a culture that is friendly to those concepts, that doesn't think that they're weird, that thinks, no, it's perfectly normal to feel like a tree has a spirit, and to accept that that's all right, and that that's not bad or weird. It's just the way that nature is. And so that was a huge influence to be around people who had that belief. I'm sure that the energies have influenced me in Montana. We have some pretty powerful, well, other people call them ley lines. I'm not a big expert on that, but I do know that there are places where you feel sort of a harmonic resonance. I feel anyway, personally, experientially, I feel pulled on. I feel like the rattlesnake, it's always like, come and visit me. Come here. There's good energy. It'll help you balance. Come up here and look at this. It's so beautiful. And I feel like there are a lot of places in Montana where it pulls on people and they're not even aware of it. But we know in our souls that whether it be microgravity with the effects of the Earth's magnetic field, with spiritual experience, when you put it all together, it's all connected. There are places that help us be in balance and feel empowered and connect better to our own souls. And of course, we have all these wonderful masterpieces of nature. And so we have Glacier Park and we have the Montana dolmens, and we have, just that whole geological formation that runs sort of diagonally from, I think it starts around Glacier Park, and then it moves kind of across from northwest to southeast. There's a lot of neat geological stuff that's just so beautiful. And it's also culturally significant. There's a lot of the petrographs you'll find it right along that line. And it makes psychological sense that the natives would think it's a special place, but I think it also makes energy sense. I think regardless of what that place is or how it got there, even if there were no petroglyphs, it's a special place. It's unique, and it affects people.
Yeah.
Whether they believe that it's magical or not, it affects them when they're there, if not just the feeling of being in nature.
Yeah.
Locally in Missoula, there are some places that are more pleasant than others. And of course, we have places called Rattlesnake and Negrino Park, which I feel is filled with all kinds of different spiritual energy going on there.
Interesting, yeah.
And that's, back when I was practicing with other witches, that was one of the places that we love to go because it does have so much energy. There's some people who don't like to go there because they feel like it's so haunted that you can't move, but that's not how I feel about it. So, so I go there quite often when I can. And it's, it's just a really beautiful park too. So
it is really beautiful.
Sacred place to me. And, most of my gang has moved out of Missoula and are doing other things. But back when we were a group who liked to do like holiday traditions together, we would do them in Greeno Park.
Yeah. When you talk about your group of friends, that kind of leads me to another question of the community you've built here in Montana. Like, how would you describe it?
Shifting and fleeting. So, for economic reasons, usually people end up leaving because not everyone can make the living that they want to make or do the thing they want to do with their lives. So it can be kind of difficult, but I've always kind of been a solitary practitioner who enjoys other solitary practitioners. I know that there are some covens in Montana. There's Garden of the Crescent Moon is up north in Kalispell. Different tradition than mine, but we're still kindred spirits, so I support them whenever I can. I tend to be a homebody and stay mostly in Missoula. So I do have a few friends, still from back then, but most of them don't live in Missoula anymore.
Yeah.
And then of course there's the sort of the metaphysical community in general. When there's a place for all of us to hang out, we tend to know each other. We tend to meet up, but with the event of COVID, some of those places where we used to have community space, they just don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And it's always the pitfall of any sort of little bookstore that sells gifts that if the real purpose is to gather community and have a community space, sometimes that community, it doesn't have enough money to spend in your bookstore. And so it's so difficult for those kind of stores to remain open. We had Earth Spirit books with Balland for a while. And then it just turned out not to work out. It's a difficult business model in Missoula, Montana, because we are the fringe culture here.
Yeah.
And occasionally we even have to worry about, not so much now, but 10 years ago, 20 years ago, about people even knowing that we were of a non-Christian tradition, and a non-monotheistic tradition, because there was discrimination, there were problems, there were harassment even.
Really?
And so it's something that I think before people put themselves out there, especially if you want to help others, you have to come to terms with that might be something you have to deal with, that you might have negative reactions from the community about what you do, and that you possibly might have discrimination in your job or your housing because of that there might be angry divorced parents where one of them is going to say that she worships Satan or something silly like that. And so it is a real concern for many of the people who practice alternative spirituality, is that we're not accepted. It's so much better than it used to be, though.
That's good to hear.
I haven't had in the last 10 years really any negative interaction, but I tend to be pretty focused on clients and not on the public. That'll all be changing very soon.
So how do you stay grounded and centered in your own life? I know you talked that you have some of your friends do your own readings.
Right.
Outside of readings, what kind of practices do you do for yourself?
So I meditate every single day without fail.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not feeling physically well, I meditate as much as 3 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
When I do healing work for other people, which includes the readings, that's very grounding for me
Mm-hmm.
because I'm channeling sort of this universal, unconditional healing energy. And so that really keeps you grounded.
Yeah.
Like there have been times when I've done psychic fairs and I'm doing readings for like almost 14 hours.
Wow.
And for me, it's energizing and I love it. And so it's very grounding for me. But the meditation is really important. Even if it's only 5 minutes a day, if someone can manage to meditate, it's going to benefit you.
Mm-hmm.
I do it for up to half an hour. Just depends on the part of the day that we're in. I manage the energies in my home space so that I'm not vibrating in sympathy with the things around me, but can observe them instead.
Yeah.
And that can be important if you're sensitive. And then I do a lot of healing work on myself. I'm constantly, where are my blind spots? What thing can I work on? Where is a healing thing that I'm pretending I'm not noticing it that I should actually be working on? So a lot of integration with my deeper subconscious and learning to do a lot of inner child work. So I do a lot of that work with myself. A lot of and because I'm in hypnotherapy school now, I'm actually using hypnosis for self-healing and self-grounding because we all have to have other people to work on to practice in front of the teacher. And so I do that. And then I just try my best to be better tomorrow than I am today.
Yeah.
And I think that's, some days I wake up and I feel like I'm failing at that. But the point is that you keep trying, that there's always tomorrow. There's always the next moment even, to be the best you can be and to be connected to who you authentically are as a soul.
Yeah.
And what is your soul gift that you came to earth to share with other people?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what mine has been always, and I never got to share it. So my real challenge was, how do I build a life for myself where I can share that?
Yeah.
Where I can use this special gift that I have of really wanting to help people on a soul level. And the more that I focus on that, how do I manifest a place where I can share my gift? The more grounded I feel, the more authentic I feel, the more I feel like being my true self. And that I'm not having to hide any part of what it is that I came here to give people that's a benefit to everyone, and especially to me.
Mm-hmm.
So when my clients come to me for healing, they're actually helping me as much as I'm helping them because they're allowing me to do the thing that I was born to do.
Yeah.
And so it's really profound in that way that it's a two-way street. And the really good readings, that isn't just me being a talented reader. That's my client working with me to allow this really profound reading that will change the way that they perceive their life and change how they're going to move forward in the next moments. Yeah. And hopefully in a really positive way, which is always the focus, is more positive than negative.
Yeah. I love that. When you were talking about meditation, what are some of your favorite techniques that you use?
Well, first of all, there's, meditation. And one should be relaxing the body. This does two things. It equalizes our energy so that we're not using it all up for tension in our body instead of using it for the purpose that we're meditating for. But it also it softens the critical filter, which is that logical filter that will say no to things like, I believe the world is filled with magic. Well, you can't prove that. You don't know that, blah, blah, blah. And so it softens that filter so that there's room for, maybe in this context, something really truly spiritually magical. Maybe I should consider that. So it softens the critical filter that stops us being who we truly are, because that critical filter is our shield against the world. So what it really wants is for us to survive and fit in. It doesn't really so much want us to be our true selves. It's more about protecting us. So it softens that when you relax the body. And then the next step in really truly beneficial meditation is that you must learn to relax the mind. And that is where many people have a difficult time, because they have a misconception that just to be emptiness. And most people can't be like, I can't just think of nothing. Because that makes me think of all the things. Because the subconscious doesn't hear words that start with no. So when I say think of nothing, my mind hears think of things. And then I think of things. And so we want to cultivate a way that works for that person, that they can give their mind a break from whatever it is that's going on in their lives and have a place where they feel passive, where they're not constantly pushing mentally to have something happen or to prevent something from happening. And there's a lot of ways to do that. For some people, they need to be moving. They can't just sit still and think of nothing. They have to be moving and thinking about what they're doing with their body. For other people, they need to be listening to something. They might be an auditory learner, so they're going to be an auditory meditator. They need to listen to something that takes them outside of their own head. So those people really like a certain kind of music will help them. For other people, they need to just visualize a passive and tranquil scene. And these are usually the people who really are trying to work hard on themselves. That they need to visualize a scene that's passive and tranquil and positive, and they're doing nothing but observing. And so it'll be whatever their favorite scene. So, we have clients who watch fish swimming in a fish tank. So they're meditating, and in their mind, they get the body relaxed. Now it's time to watch the fish. Nothing else, just the fish. Look really closely at this fish. What color are they? Really, really do the mindfulness exercise of noticing. For other people, it's a day at the beach. For people like me who have a busy, busy brain, I had to have several of them sort of preloaded because my brain will go, okay, I'm tired of sunsets. I don't want to do this anymore. And I'll be, all right, this is time to look at rocks in the stream then. And so by doing that, though, even for 30 seconds, it makes a huge difference in the way that your brain is functioning. It pulls you into a different state of mind. And then once you've reached that placid place, that's when you can step out and you move into the deeper mind. You move into the deeper subconscious, even having more ability to move into the deep meditative state, which they call the theta state, which is where we discover our inner genius, our true balance between, it's like a set point between the mind and the body, spiritual and physical, and between emotional and logical. And for many people, that is all they need to really connect with who they are, is to just be in the middle. So when you might hear, which is another tradition, saying, are you centered? That's what it means. It's to be in a place that's in the middle, where you're not overly influenced by your emotions, but you're also not overly influenced by your critical factor and your logical thinking. You're equal between the two, and then equal between, I am in a physical body and I have a soul that is as big as the universe. And that's where people really discover where the real true work can happen, where the magic can happen, where they can visualize something they need, and then suddenly it works for them the next day. And they discover their inner genius of how what they do can help others. I'd say very, very, very seldom have I ever run into somebody whose goal wasn't to help themselves and at least a few other people. It doesn't happen hardly ever. And so being in that place, they'll suddenly realize, I can do the thing, if they're a salesman, I can sell the thing I sell. But by doing it, I could help the other people. So the people who made the thing, that single mother who worked really hard in the factory, I'm helping her. They'll start to see where it flows, where they're doing their life's work, whatever it is, and they can help others. And that's really should be the goal of meditation, is to reach that sort of center point where you can be in between all of it. And what happens for a lot of people is all the craziness around them just stops, and they just suddenly start to see their lives in a context that's totally different than the context they're experiencing in the emotional moment or in the critical factor of picking it apart moment. And so that is really, regardless of what my technique is, that's what I'm doing in each and every meditation that I do and that I teach. The body relaxation part of it is really beneficial for me. So I have a few health issues that cause me a lot of chronic pain. And the body meditation can reduce pain, which seems like it's at an 8, I can reduce it by reducing the tension in my body to where it's completely tolerable.
Yeah.
And so that part of it is really important for me, is to keep doing that so that I'm not, because I'll have pain, then I'll get one little muscle that's tense because of that pain. And the next thing, there's two muscles that are tense because you don't like pain. And pretty soon I'm a giant knot. And so did I not meditate that day would be the first question I would ask myself if I'm feeling like that is, did you do your meditation? Usually the answer is no. No, I haven't gotten to it yet. I need to get to that because that's how I keep myself from feeling terrible. And then, there's so many different meditations you can do that if you're achieving those key points of meditating, relax the body, soften the critical factor that picks everything apart, and then relax the mind so that you reach that center point. How you get there is so much less important than the fact that you are there.
Yeah.
I've been practicing meditation every day without fail, at least once a day. If I forget all day, then before I am allowed to go to sleep, I have to do it. I won't be able to sleep if I don't. So for at least 25 years, I've been doing this. Wow. So I embrace all different kinds. But when people are just starting out, it's really important to find out what is your learning style and what meditation do you feel like you're good at. If you're good at visualizing, then absolutely do a visualization and then just see what other senses you can incorporate. But if you're a person who doesn't see things but only hears them, then that's the kind of meditation you need, is one where you're listening for things. Usually what happens is people then build up the skills for the other learning factors as they continue to meditate. People are often surprised at the things that they can do that they couldn't do when they just practice meditating for a while, and it grows. And your sensations grow and your mind gets it, because you're changing the neural pathways in your brain when you meditate. And you're building stronger ones towards that state of meditation. And so it does become easier over time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kind of switching a little more towards like reading.
Right.
Do you have an experience or reading that you would say was your favorite, or one that you just think about from time to time that's really stuck with you throughout the years?
For me and my own personal experience, or my experience with a client?
Either or.
Okay, so let's see. I have meditative sessions where I was like, oh my gosh, I completely see now how my belief about something has colored my entire view of it my whole life and had a giant shift. So I might have had an experience as a child where I'm trying to tell somebody something. So, and this person is a grown up. And as a 4-year-old, I'm like, why can't they understand what I'm saying? They must be stupid. Like, doesn't occur to me, like, I'm 4 and I'm not using real words.
Yeah.
But, because we do that. Sometimes our thing isn't a trauma. It's just we decided a thing and we were wrong. So I decided that this person was stupid. And it colored on my entire relationship with them for the rest of my life until I had this realization that that's what happened. That's what I decided. And I've seen them through that lens ever since. And that was really profound for me because it changed me a little bit after I realized that, which then changed the way I reacted to that person. Which changed the way they reacted to me. And then it's a ping pong game of changing our reactions to each other until our entire relationship is transformed. And so that is very profound, especially when it happens with someone that is an elder in your family. So that was very profound for me. In the readings I've had, my readings are always profound. So it's hard to choose one. What I would have to say, one that was very validating, like you have these moments of synchronicity where the client is so ready and so cooperative, and you're so in tune with them that you have these miraculous readings. So I've had a couple where I'm doing the reading, and as I'm doing the reading, they're seeing a whole movie of how it is in their life. That's very profound when they tell you after the reading what happened to them. There was one time when I was doing a reading for a woman who wanted to be unconditionally loving, and she was having a hard time balancing unconditional love with being walked all over and standing up for herself and being true to herself. And so we were doing an Akashic record reading, and one of the things that I might ask someone in a reading like that is, would you like to look at all the other people that you have ever been in the existence of your soul and see if one of them has accomplished mastered this, what is it like to be unconditionally loving and still protects oneself and be true to oneself and have good boundaries?
Mm-hmm.
And so she said, that was wonderful, and said, and if we find that part of your soul, we can bring it to your present life to help you because it already knows what it's like. And so we're doing this, and I don't always see identifying factors like what did I look like, what was my skin like, what were my clothes like. I don't always see those because we see what's important for the healing. We see what our curiosity wants us to learn. But she really was like, I really want to know what my name was in this time and place. And so I say, can't guarantee you anything. If it's unimportant, we won't be told. So I ask, and her other lifetime, which was like a teenage boy, he says, well, I'm talking to you right now through your mind, and there's a word for what my name was in that life, but you're not going to know the word. So he tells it to me phonetically, and I don't remember what it was right now, because it's not my business. I let it go.
Mm-hmm.
But so I write it down. I tell the client, and then after she's very happy with it. It's been very profound. There's tears, there's laughter, there's healing, and she's just feeling really good that this was the right choice. And so then I go to the internet, because I always do that after I have a reading where I'm told something where I don't want it. I look up the name, the name that I get phonetically. I type it in 2 or 3 times, different spellings, and then it comes up. The meaning of that word is unconditional love.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, wow. So then, of course, I have to tell my client, I'm like, you'll never guess what. And I send her the link, and she's like, oh, that's so amazing. And I'm like, I'm not sure that we got the name. So we did get a word that was meaningful for your healing. Like, we don't know that person was named unconditional love. And if she were not a person who believed in past lives, then it would be still a metaphor, still her subconscious sending her healing.
Mm-hmm.
But so that was a really profound reading for me. A lot of times I don't remember. I've done so many, probably thousands of readings in my life. And so a lot of times I have my clients take notes, because I'm not going to remember it after I'm done with the reading very clearly, because first of all, it's not my business. And second of all, where would I put it all? Like, there's not room in my brain to hold all that information from every reading I've ever done. So that has been very, very profound. There was another time where I just made the cards. I'd had them for maybe 5 years. They were finally completed. And I was playing a role-playing game with some of my friends, and my character was a psychic from California. And so kind of floofy, kind of silly, but it was like it was like Sci Factor, that old show where they would have a psychic investigator with them, so it was a game like that. And so I said to the game master, I said, do you care if I use my cards to try to read out the things that have happened in the game that my character doesn't know about, that I don't personally know what your plot is going to be? And so I laid the cards down, what happened before this, what's going to happen now, and what's plotted for the future. And I told him about it. And this is a person who doesn't believe in this sort of thing. And he's like, holy shit, who told you that? And I'm like, nobody told me. The cards told me. He's like, no, Aaron told you, didn't he? Aaron's like, I didn't tell anybody. And he's like, I didn't even know this part of the plot. You're planning to do that? So that was pretty fun and profound and synchronistic to have it read something that had nothing to do with, but I must have needed that validation that, you could actually see things with this if you really wanted to. So that was fun and profound. Yeah. Just, those are my favorite ones. If they're profound and they're super fun. And because, joy is healing. So
that's true. Yeah. So I know we talked about like meditation and like the aspects of that, but more in a like broad sense, what do you think the core elements of spiritual wellness are?
Well,
and how do you implement them?
It's an integration of the parts of the self is what I would say. So for many people, that's a confusing thing to say to them because they don't know that they're not truly integrated with their deep subconscious. They don't understand that. So one of the things is to begin to bring them to a place where they can understand that you probably have all the love and wisdom that you will ever need inside of you, and you just don't know it. To be able to connect and see different parts of oneself, and to, so I would guess that my goal is, again, to have them connect with their own higher sense of being, their own soul, their own purpose in this life, and to allow them, I allow them the tools for stepping into that role of I am my higher self in this moment, and I am balanced amongst all of the life chaos, and I am looking at myself in his physical body, and yet I am an eternal soul. That is very much the goal, because most of the other healings that can happen, if you can connect that way, things become clear to you. You begin to see, oh, I have this fragmented part of myself from a trauma that the other pieces of myself will not let me look at because it was painful and they're protecting me. So psychology involved, of course, with the subconscious. Logical reasoning has a place too. So we want, the mind and the body and the spirit, we want them all to be on the same page for a few minutes. And a lot of times, just repeatedly a few minutes every now and then. And it truly helps people understand. They start doing things like not tolerating crap that they were tolerating before that was really bothering them and they weren't admitting it. They start sorting out, as a natural process, what is really right for them versus what their family, friends, and their culture have told them they're supposed to have, do, and be. So very much a becoming of who they truly are. And all those things happen as you start getting in touch with your deeper self, your traumas, your perspective on the traumas, your belief and knowing that you are an eternal soul being. And some people don't believe that, and that's okay. That's, it's experiential. You won't believe it until you've experienced it. So my goal is really to assist people in there. If they have the desire to experience it, I have tools to share with them to assist them in gaining that experience. And it's never the same. Everyone's spiritual path is different. For some people, they find it through religion. But that is only one way of doing it. There's some people who find it through having a certain thing at a certain time in a certain place. Your soul purpose might be, I need to live in a cabin next to a beautiful river in the mountains, and I need to love this property that I live on. And that is all that they wanted from this life. And they have that, and they are content. So it doesn't have to be a profound world-changing thing. It can just be, what is the experience that your soul really wanted to be here to have? There's always suffering involved, because it would seem to me from my personal experience that human souls, we just love some suffering. If we were offered lives where we wouldn't have any suffering, we wouldn't even show up because there has to be something to contrast the good things. And so my opinion is that, we all come here to understand good things, but also to experience some suffering so that those good things will truly be in perspective for us. Not that people could never get caught up in a whirlpool of suffering that they didn't intend on being in, because I think that happens sometimes. But yeah, bringing people closer to who they really are as a soul is my goal. And those are the tools that I collect in my little toolbox to help them in different ways. So I'm also an EFT practitioner, so I do the energy tapping. I've been doing that for probably 15, 20 years. I do some Reiki. I do all kinds of things that maybe people might think I shouldn't do, but I do them if I'm called to do them, or that I shouldn't be able to do. But if it's meant to do it, it happens, and I'm not actually the one who's doing it. It's actually between the client and whatever the higher power is that governs what happens in that kind of a healing session. And more I'm finding that assisting people in coming to terms with trauma tends to be one of the main things that happens in my readings and in because a lot of times if you're getting a longer session with me, you're not just getting a reading. We're going to heal some of the stuff that happens in that reading. Some of the arrows are going to point to, here's the thing that you've been working on. And I might work with someone, only with their permission, of course, to work on a specific trauma that they, because people are hardwired to avoid pain and to seek pleasure. And traumas are, of course, the pain that we all want to avoid. And so sometimes people just need help feeling safe, feeling the feelings. And that's the only part that was missing, was they needed to feel the feelings and feel safe while they did it. And they do that. And then they are like, oh, I see everything differently now.
That's really cool. One of my last questions is, for people starting out on like a spiritual journey, I mean, you can look on the internet and find millions of things to start with. How do you recommend people start in simpler terms?
It's definitely good to read about it. I tell people, what is your ancestry? That is the first place that you could look. Just to see what is your ancestry. If you go back far enough in anyone's ancestry, no matter where they come from, and no matter what their family beliefs are right now, you will find a magical, mystical belief system of some sort. So that's the first place I tell people to look. But then I also would tell them, where are you drawn to? What inspires you? When you think about that specific tradition, does it feel good? Do you feel excited? Does it feel like something you could, like, you're like, oh, I see how the pieces fit together. This makes sense to me. If you feel that way about it, that inspiration and feeling like this might be easier than I thought and I might be really good at this, well, that's definitely a sign that you should look in that direction. People often start with one tradition and then they grow and then they move to another. It's perfectly okay to be eclectic if that works for you. The one thing I would be saying is, don't be appropriating other cultures. And if you really feel like a soul calling to do something from a culture that doesn't belong to you, that should be a private thing between you and whatever your concept of God is. Because a lot of the cultures that have been appropriated, they just don't need any more of that.
No.
However, that doesn't mean that they own certain concepts. And so all tribal cultures, for example, have the concept of animal powers being in some way valuable, being an example, being a guide to them. So if you were to say, I'm really drawn to bears in a spiritual way, that wouldn't be appropriating. But if I were to say, I'm going to do the bear ritual from a particular tribe that I am not a member of, that would be not a good thing.
Yeah.
You should find your own way. And if you are going to embrace a tradition, say that you have a teacher from that tradition, they're teaching you that tradition. My personal feeling is really important that while you're in that tradition, you are in that tradition. You're not practicing other traditions. You're not disregarding parts of the tradition that you don't like. If you're going to be taught in that tradition by someone who has agreed to teach you, then you need to be completely in that tradition until the point where you leave. Because that's how people get all confused about what's going on, is trying to do more than one tradition at a time. And for your mentor, it's really disrespectful as well to be doing other traditions.
Yeah.
If you have been told by them that they want you to focus on the tradition they're teaching you, that kind of teaching doesn't happen as often anymore, but there still are, pathways. And there's more organized forms of, for example, Wicca. Gardnerianism is very kind of more dictated than a lot of the other forms. Me personally, I'm a hedge witch and a kitchen witch, so I use what I use when I need to use it. I don't care if we have the right incense. I need to do this right now. I'm going to use the incense that's in my hand. And so it just depends on, what is okay in your tradition that you're studying. And then if you feel like a tradition just isn't right for you, then it isn't right for you. Stop doing it. Look for something else. Understanding the fundamentals that flow through all magical traditions can be really helpful to people. And so when I have students, there are certain rules I teach them, because my students, I'm not teaching them to be like me. I'm teaching them to be like themselves. And so I'm teaching them, no matter what tradition you do, these are some of the things you want to follow as rules, because they will prevent you from suffering. They will keep you from making mistakes that might be painful. They will help you understand what's happening. And so it's good to have a foundational, grasp on some of those things.
Yeah.
For example, whatever you are going to do to others through magical means, you will first and most powerfully do it to yourself first. And so, that's just one of the fundamental rules, is to remember that, if you go around wishing bad things on others, then you're actually wishing them on yourself as well. And do you really need that in your life? Most people don't.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Those are most of my questions.
Okay.
So.
And that's all for today. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today, Dianne. I really appreciate all of the advice. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great day.